So Erika Kirk and JD Vance are secretly in love, and it's one of the most obvious affairs in the history of politics. Erika blushing every 2 seconds, mentioning his name, and some of the most suspicious hand placements coming from two people who claim to be just friends.
He's a dear friend. My husband and him were very good friends.
So it's obvious, right? Zero possibility this is being blown out of proportion. Wrong. You're missing everything. You've made the absolute wrong conclusion. There's no affair, no intense feelings, there's no conspiracy. But doesn't mean there isn't something going on. So I dug a little deeper. And after going through the last 2 months of all the weird shit we've seen him do and getting a little clarity from a trained body language professional, I figured it out. I figured out what's actually going on between the two. And spoiler, this shit has nothing to do with JD Vance, but everything to do with Erika. So let's get this thing started with the hug felt all over the world. By the way, if you ever wondered how I make videos as good as this that actually perform well on a small channel like the rest of my catalog, I just launched my YouTube mentorship program where I literally work with you one-on-one on a daily basis. Take out all the guesswork and all the stress that comes from making videos and being a small creator. I tell you what to post, how to make it, and then we watch your views skyrocket overnight. Perfect example, my younger brother. Check out his views on his old channel versus his new one. That's right, first video on his brand new channel is already closing in on 750K views. What made the difference? Just told him what to do. So if you're interested in becoming the creator you've always dreamt of being, click the link in the pinned comment, fill out the form, and I'll email you with the next steps. One more thing, We Are Zuke mouse pads are available for 20% off for the holidays. They're actually really cool, and it's kind of just to stick it to Reagan for getting my name wrong.
Zuke? What is it?
I'm sending a thank you to everyone who gets one, so link in the description.
I am tremendously blessed and honored tonight to be able to introduce to you a very, very dear friend.
So I know what you're thinking. She likes the guy. Well, no. Or maybe. That's what we're here to find out. Here to help me out with all of this is a creator named Spidey from the behavioral arts, a body language professional who was able to break down every little twitch from JD and Erika at this event. And the only thing he didn't do was make assumptions or come to any conclusions. And that's where I come in. His goal is to break down what might have been going on in their heads. My goal is to take that and make sense of it so we can figure out what the relationship dynamic actually is. Time for me to show you exactly how I came to my conclusion. Let's get started.
I am tremendously blessed and honored tonight to be able to introduce to you a very, very dear friend and his wife.
Oof, rough switch. So I have my own thoughts about, the smile to serious face thing that she did, but I'm just gonna let the professional dissect it first.
As she's introducing JD Vance, she says, a very, very dear friend, and we see a smile on her face and then eye block. And there's a lot of research on eye blocking, and it happens when we're trying to hold on to a thought or trying to move away from a thought. The rest of the behaviors, both verbally and non-verbally, allow us to know which of the two it is. So in this case, as she's saying, a very dear friend of mine with that eye block, it's likely that this is positive. She's trying to hold on or emphasize how dear this relationship is, how positive it is, how lucky she is to have this friend in her life.
Agreed, but she could be thinking about some specific moments she had with JD. For example, how you're telling a friend about a date you just had or that one hookup that you'll never forget? You're like, man, she was banging. You're visualizing the moment. So it could be that, or she's just thinking about how good of a friend he is.
After this moment, she says, and his wife, as the expression changes. The smile goes away, she looks up like this, and we see this kind of jittery no with her head, with a very serious look on her face. So for Erika Kirk, this whole no gesture with a very serious face, especially when she's talking about something either emotional or serious, is very much part of her baseline. Here are a few examples. They don't all look exactly the same, but they have that commonality where there's this jitter of the head like this.
Being the courageous generation that you are. Love this country, defend her. I lost my friend. I lost my best friend.
Even if this is a positive message, we're still seeing that same gesture like this because of how serious it is in tone. So if we go back to the idea of JD Vance and his wife, that shift in demeanor absolutely does suggest that there's a shift in thought, because we don't go from this to this without a shift in what's going on in our head. Again, this is such a great example of why I stay away from bias, because if I've already come into this with confirmation bias, I've already decided that she's madly in love with JD Vance and she wants Usha out of the picture, which is a possibility but not a certainty. I look at that and go, oh my God, she hates the wife. That might be what this is. But we should also consider the fact that it could be something else.
Right, that's the thing with behavioral analysis. Could be several things. Something I thought of was maybe she likes Vance more. Maybe he's more charismatic, more warm, more of a charmer. And Usha could just be more serious of a person. Like for instance, right, let's say you're in a friend group, right? And there's two different kinds of people in the group. Tim and John. Tim's a goof, warmer, friendlier. John's a little bit more cold, serious, more reserved. And every time you mention them, you subconsciously mention them in different ways. Oh, Tim? Yeah, Tim's my guy, man, dude. Tim's a trip. Oh, John? Yeah, John's cool, man. See the difference? So that switch, whether it was intentional or, unconscious, just means JD might be a friendlier guy. But honestly, that crap doesn't matter. The two things that started this scandal was the hug and Erika claiming JD reminded her of her husband.
No one will ever replace my husband. No. But I do see some similarities of my husband in JD.
Keyword husband. And according to Spidey, her using that word is the most telling part of the speech.
Now the next part I can cover with a lot of certainty because I'm very familiar with this principle given what I do for a living. So she says, nobody can replace my husband. No, but I see a lot of similarities with JD. What she just said right there in psychology is known as a suggestion. Look, words have a lot of power. First of all, the brain doesn't really register negations the way we think. For example, if I say, do not think of a green apple, most of us are thinking of a green apple because the brain has to go, okay, wait, what is it I'm not supposed to think of? A green apple? Okay, don't think of that. Second, her word choice really contributes to this suggestion as well because she's saying nobody can replace my husband. Not nobody can replace Charlie. There is a ton of research that shows that the descriptive words that we use to talk about someone affects the image that the listeners have about that person. So if she had said, nobody can replace Charlie, the image we would have had in our heads may have been Charlie the speaker, Charlie the social media influencer. But JD Vance has some similarities when it comes to that. But she said, nobody can replace my husband. So the image that we have in our heads now is not Charlie the influencer, Charlie the speaker, it's Charlie, Erika's husband. And it's creating this image of JD replacing her husband, not Charlie Kirk the speaker.
Right, which suggests she could subconsciously be thinking of JD as a romantic option. Which, I mean, in a different world, it's not out of the picture. I mean, he's the same archetype as Charlie. But what we're not gonna do is ignore a completely different explanation that could just as easily be true, probably even more so. So Erika really only has three ways she could refer to Charlie: husband, father, and just Charlie. Her saying husband, like Spidey says, could be her just thinking of JD in that way while she said it. But I think the more probable reason why she chose to use that word was to signify that, yeah, Charlie might have been this pantheon figure to you guys, but right now that's not important. Right now, he was my husband. My person. So not only do I think this was the case, but I also think it was intentional. The same way a grieving parent who loses a child wouldn't say, we lost our Jessica. They'd say, we lost our daughter. So how someone naturally refers to a person shows you exactly how they viewed that relationship. So that sums up the speech, which I'm gonna be honest, you don't really get much from, especially compared to how much you get from the hug. That's the game changer. And Spidey had a lot to say about that.
The first thing that anyone in my line of work would notice is that at the moment that she goes to hug him, we see her right shoulder move upwards like this into the hug. In his best-selling book, What Everybody Is Saying, former FBI agent and world-renowned interrogation and body language expert Joe Navarro, who's been on the channel before, talks a lot about gravity-defying gesture. This is any time where we see gestures in the body that move upwards while someone's communicating. And these are a very good sign of positive feeling. When we're feeling good, we go upwards with our body language. It's even in the language, right? I'm jumping for joy. I'm in heaven. I'm on cloud 9. And the research supports this as well. This is something that we very often see in the shoulders in moments of affection and embrace. It's so universally recognized that it's often used in cartoons. When people hug each other, those shoulders come up to show just how close and affectionate that hug is. And that's exactly what's happening here with Erika Kirk and JD Vance. As she hugs him, we see that shoulder come up as she fully immerses herself in this positive moment.
All right, just a hug. Not too crazy. You'll start noticing a pattern here really soon, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's let Spidey break down these weird hand placements.
So we see the shoulder go up, and then we go right into the moment that everyone online is talking about, where her hand moves up and goes right up into his hair/head on the side over here with this open palm gripping of his head. When I was doing my certification course for body language analysis, one of the first things that we learned, and there was a lot of emphasis on this, when people touch in a social setting, how much of the palm makes contact with the other person. And not just that, where on the body are these touches happening? The arm and the hands is pretty much a free-for-all zone. When you're greeting someone with a handshake, we do palm-to-palm contact as we greet them. We might even touch their arm with the other palm like this, and that's fine. That happens in very professional setting. When somebody does touch someone else, it's usually a brushing and very often with the fingers. So somebody might say something funny, you might give them a little tap on the shoulder like this, but it's rarely a grasp, and it's rarely with the full palm of the hand. Now, as we observe people who are more familiar with each other, like friends, we notice two things increase. One is how much of the hand is making contact and where on the body. So we see those touches moving a little bit away from the arms. It could be like on the chest, or it could be on the back, and we start to see a little bit more contact area with the rest of the hand. And when we move into very close relationships, like very close friends or family or intimate relationships, we start to touch areas that are a little bit more off limits, usually socially, like the neck, the face, the small of the back, the waist, and we use a lot more of that palm. However, there is a caveat. In moments where we're providing or requesting emotional comfort, those touches go up on that scale regardless of the relationship. So with a colleague that we usually just kind of shake hands professionally, if they announce sad news and they're feeling low, we might give a more comforting, touch on the shoulder like it's gonna be okay. If I have a friend that typically, a fist bump, if something tragic happens and they need comfort, I might give them a hug that's a little bit more intimate, a little bit more hold them with the hand up here or around the face.
One comment on this video stood out to me. It was from a woman who said the only men she's ever, laid her hand on the back of their head were her boyfriends and her husband. Now, the hand could be harmless, and the easy way to judge that is to see if she hugs other people the same way, which I was able to find. And as for the hand on the back of the head thing, just 5 days after this exact event with JD, she was on stage with Megyn Kelly explaining her exact reasoning for, holding Vance's head like that. And it was a good reason. But before any of that, I want to get to the part of Spidey's breakdown when he talks about JD's body language, because that's when things finally started clicking for him as to what's actually going on here between the two.
So let's look at JD Vance's nonverbal communication when he comes in for this hug. So the first thing you'll notice is that his hands that are down by his side open up like this, which is him getting ready for an embrace. But at the very same time, you'll notice that he leads with his head. His head leans forward. And this could suggest a couple of things. First of all, he's significantly taller than her, and if he wants to give her a warm hug, he does need to bring his head down, so this could be him getting ready for that. Usually if you want to know how close two people are, especially with a hug, look at the pelvic area. Usually with very close friends or people that we're very close to, we see the pelvis come close to each other as we hug someone. But in relationships that are more professional or distant, we see what we call pelvic distancing. You might see people hug like this with the upper body, but the pelvis is far from each other. And if we look at this hug, you'll notice there's a slight discrepancy between the two, because with Erika, her body is more straight, whereas him, with his head leaning forward, it's kind of forced his lower body to move away a little bit. It's not one of these like this, but it is a little bit more distanced than her. Now, if it was just this, I'd proceed with caution, because again, he's significantly taller than her. So in order to hug her, there naturally has to be this little bit of a bend.
It's true. You know how many dating shows I've seen where two people meet, they hug and their crotch is like miles apart? Me personally, I'm not hugging a friend's wife like this. But in this very unique circumstance, your close friend just passed, seems like his wife is like a sister to you and she's grieving. So a hug like this, you know, no big deal. But how JD was acting during the hug is where things started to become clear to me. Not gonna say it just yet, because keep in mind, like Spidey says, JD is significantly taller than Erika. So him pulling his pelvis back while, you know, Erika's straight up, pelvis front and center, it may not mean much. But that's exactly why these last two breakdowns of JD's body language are very crucial in finding out what's actually going on between the two.
Notice how the moment the hug happens and she raises her shoulder into him like this, as she's moving her hand up, we see something with him. We see his right hand kind of tapping her like this on the back. It's not a rubbing, it's not a squeezing, it's this tapping. Tapping in almost any scenario suggests more of a friendly relationship between two individuals. I don't even need to tell you this. Think about any hug where instead of holding the person like this, you're just kind of tapping. This is a very friendly kind of gesture. It does contrast in this case with the fact that his left hand is flat against her lower back. And I think what's happening here is he's noticing the way this hug might come off.
Or, all right, could be JD giving the, that's enough. And that's what told me everything I needed to know. Whatever Erika's feeling or letting slip, JD's closing that door pretty firmly. Not saying Erika's throwing herself at him, but people are like this. You know, JD's probably Erika's type, successful, tall, intelligent guy in politics, you know, just like Charlie. Partner that with them already having a close relationship.
He's a dear friend. My husband and him were very good friends.
And subconsciously or not, her body's gonna do what her body wants to do. And again, this is all one-sided. The body language, the compliments, and just a few days ago, this very early endorsement.
We are going to get my husband's friend, JD Vance, elected for 48 and the most resounding way possible.
Look, we already know their families are close. And like she stated, she sees a lot of similarities between her husband and JD. So I'm sure JD was her and Charlie's first choice as presidential nominee. But from what I've seen, the consensus is that this early endorsement is pretty abnormal. So it's not helping the affair allegation. So the only question now is, are all these things intentional or unintentional? In this clip of Erika 5 days after that infamous hug, explaining her exact reasoning behind it might clear things up a bit.
Did you see people didn't understand the hug that you and JD had?
So for those of you who know me, I hug. It's
Yes,
like
you're an intense hugger. It's
whoever
awesome.
is like hating on a hug needs a hug themselves. My love language is touch, if you will. I will give you a play-by-play. They just played the emotional video. I'm walking over, he's walking over, I'm starting to cry. He says, he's so proud of you. And I say, God bless you. And I touch the back of his head. Anyone who I've hugged that I have touched the back of your head when I hug you, I always say, God bless you.
They were acting like you touched the back of his ass.
I feel like I wouldn't get as much hate if I did that.
So she says, God bless you, every time she holds the back of somebody's head. That checks out, but that's something you do to like a subordinate, like a pastor-child relationship. So why she's doing it to a grown-ass man? I don't know. And in the other video I found of her hugging other people, she does the same exact thing. But the thing about those are, we all know what girls do with their girlfriends, they don't do it with, you know, their guy friends. Hand placements, gestures, certain looks, you know, you don't want to give your guy friend the wrong idea. Membership link down below. The Weird Zeke Mouse Pass, 20% off, link in the description. And with all that, just leads me to conclude, there's a shit ton of possibilities. So what I'm gonna do is, I give you every single one I think is possible, and you tell me what's going on. Number one, Erika either trusts JD enough to where she doesn't have to watch what she says or does around him, because he'll never take it the wrong way, and you'll never see her like that. Number two, she subconsciously does have a connection to JD because JD's her type. It seems like she really values his friendship, but that's all it is, a friendship. And number three, Erika does have romantic feelings for JD and does see him in that way. I wouldn't mind pursuing something. Now, I think this one's highly unlikely. But I guess we'll never know.